You wake up, scroll through your phone, check a few posts, glance at a headline, maybe like something you do not even remember later. By the time you finish your coffee, 10 decisions have been made for you. You think they were yours, but were they? Somewhere behind your choices, opinions, even your emotions, something else was guiding the hand, and it was not you. There is a force in your life that you have never named. It sits quietly, disguised as your personality, your preferences, your habits. It hides behind smiles, approval, good intentions, and even love. It exists in governments, religions, algorithms, and relationships. It whispers suggestions that feel like your own thoughts. It rewards obedience and punishes doubt, but never in ways that make you notice. You may call it manipulation, you may call it conditioning. Psychology gave it categories, philosophy gave it metaphors, but neither named it in full. That force is dark psychology. You were taught to believe that understanding good behavior was enough, that you could live a decent life as long as you avoided lies, violence, or cruelty. But what if what shapes you is not the obvious darkness, but the unseen one? The kind that smiles at you, reassures you, convinces you that you are still in control. What if your beliefs, especially the ones you defend most, are not even yours to begin with? Here is the disturbing part. Most people will never know they were manipulated. They will defend their manipulators, trust them, vote for them, even love them. You probably already have. This is not just about conspiracy, propaganda, or politics. It is about your human behavior, your unconscious mind, and the philosophical truth that what you call you may only be a product of survival instincts, social conditioning, and cognitive bias. It is not a theory, it is not abstract. It is right now in your thoughts, in your decisions, in your self-image. You were not born free, you were shaped. Dark psychology is not something distant. It is in your friendships, your career, your romantic relationships. When someone guilt-tripped you into doing something, when someone framed the truth to seem like your fault, when you convinced yourself that staying silent was safer than speaking up. These are not rare events. They are mechanisms, repeatable, predictable, documented, and yet, almost no one names it. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the denied self, the unconscious urges we repress but act out. Machiavelli described it as necessity, the art of appearing virtuous while doing whatever ensures survival. From Jungian psychology to Machiavellianism, the warning signs were always there, but they were dressed as insights, not alarms. You may believe you are doing what you want, following your own path, making your own choices. But if that were true, why does satisfaction always seem just out of reach? Why does fulfillment feel like a trick your mind plays on itself, again and again? This video is not here to comfort you. It is not a guide to avoid toxic people or a checklist to spot narcissists. That is surface level. This is about the structure underneath, the system you are part of, the structure you also recreate. Without realizing, something powerful has been shaping your mind, your memories, and even your morality. What if dark psychology is not just something used by others, but something you have been using too? Stay until the end, and you will see not just how it works, but why it is far more dangerous now than ever before. The forgotten force is no longer just hiding behind others. It may already be hiding inside you. Since childhood, you were taught a comforting belief, one that sounds empowering, logical, even moral. You were told that you are the author of your own choices, that free will defines you, that every decision you make, every reaction you have, every emotion you feel, comes from a place of personal control. You were led to believe that being a good person, a rational person, means you are not easily influenced, that you think for yourself. But that belief, as soothing as it is, was a lie. It is not entirely your fault. Society needs that illusion to function. Schools teach you to obey, while telling you it is independence. Advertisers tell you what to want, while assuring you that you are deciding for yourself. Religion promises salvation, but only through surrender. Politics offers freedom, but only if you vote the right way. The structure rewards compliance, but it masks it as autonomy. And over time, the mind adapts. It stops noticing the contradiction. This is where dark psychology thrives, not in the obvious acts of manipulation, but in the ordinary, in the daily repetition of scripts you did not write, in the preferences you mistake for personality, in the confidence you wear, not realizing it was stitched together by those who profit from your predictability. You do not need to be coerced with violence when you can be persuaded with identity. You do not need to be silenced when you learn to censor yourself. The truth is, most of what you do is not a choice. It is a response, and that response is built over years of behavioral conditioning, reinforced by social approval and manipulated through emotional feedback loops. Researchers in behavioral science like B.F. Skinner and modern neuropsychologists have demonstrated that human beings are far more programmable than we like to admit. What rewards us, we repeat. What punishes us, we avoid. We are shaped by invisible consequences long before we make a conscious decision. Think about the last time you agreed with someone, not because you believed them, but because it felt safer to nod, or when you stayed quiet, not because you had no thoughts, but because speaking would cost you something. These moments seem small, harmless, but together they create a pattern, and the longer the pattern persists, the more it becomes your identity. This is not just a psychological trick, it is a philosophical dilemma. If your choices are shaped by forces outside of your awareness, are they truly yours? If your beliefs were planted long before you questioned them, are they really beliefs or just borrowed defenses? And if you were raised to be obedient, even to the idea of independence, then how would you ever know the difference? Here lies the paradox most people live in. The louder they declare their freedom, the more tightly they cling to the chains that feel familiar. Dark psychology operates beneath that comfort. It hides in the false sense of certainty, in the stories you tell yourself to sleep better at night, and it waits. It waits for the moment you mistake emotional ease for truth. That is when it locks in. By now, you may feel a tension, a discomfort pulling at your mind. That is good. That is where awareness begins. But be warned, awareness does not come without cost. If you are still with me, then you are not just watching, you're confronting. You are asking the question most people are too afraid to whisper: what if I am not who I think I am? If that question lingers, it is meant to. Tell me in the comments, honestly, when was the last time you felt completely in control, without doubt, without pressure, without fear of consequence? Share what control really means to you, if you still believe in it. Like the video, if it pulled something out of you. Subscribe if you want to keep walking deeper, because we have only peeled back one layer of this force. The rest is buried deeper, inside history, society, and you. Long before the term dark psychology was used, the mechanics behind it were already in motion. The human mind did not evolve for truth. It evolved for survival, and survival, especially in a world filled with threat and competition, requires more than honesty and reason. It demands influence, deception, control. It requires the ability to manipulate others while convincing yourself that you are not. This began in small, primitive tribes, where social cohesion determined life or death. Favor from the group meant protection, rejection meant extinction. Over time, the most successful humans were not the strongest, but the most adaptable, the ones who could persuade, charm, or quietly control. That instinct was passed down. It shaped not only how people relate to others, but how they construct reality itself. Fast forward to modern society, and those tribal instincts have not disappeared. They have evolved into systems, into institutions, into tools of persuasion so advanced, so subtle, that most people do not even recognize they are being controlled. They believe in ideas like democracy, equality, freedom of thought, while unknowingly moving inside the frame someone else designed. The psychological research proves it. Stanley Milgram's obedience study, for example, showed how ordinary people would administer lethal shocks to a stranger if instructed by an authority figure, not because they were evil, not because they wanted to, but because they were conditioned to obey. The Stanford prison experiment, led by Philip Zimbardo, revealed how quickly people internalize power roles, becoming abusers or victims based on context alone. What those experiments revealed was not about isolated behavior. It was a reflection of how fragile morality becomes under pressure, how quickly a sense of self can collapse when exposed to structured manipulation. And then there is Machiavelli, whose writings have become the blueprint for strategic deception. His work was not a guide to evil, as many assume. It was a mirror, a brutally honest account of how power actually works. Once you strip away ideals, he understood something most still do not, that moral appearance is more useful than moral substance. This is why Machiavellianism is one of the core elements in dark psychology. It describes not just how manipulators behave, but why they are often rewarded. In a world that values image over integrity, the skilled manipulator thrives while the honest one is left behind. But it is not just about historical thinkers or academic studies. It is about your daily life. You see dark psychology in advertising that sells you identity, not product. In media that frames outrage as truth. In leaders who weaponize fear while smiling through speeches. In families where guilt is used to shape behavior under the label of love. You see it in every place where the truth is bent, not for clarity, but for control. It works because it wears masks. It pretends to be reason, morality, kindness. It shows up as inspiration while stealing your ability to question. And the scariest part is, it does not only come from others. You learn it, you use it, sometimes to protect yourself, sometimes to get what you want, and sometimes, without realizing it, to become exactly what once hurt you. So the question is not, where did dark psychology come from? It is, how much of it is now inside you? You are not separate from its history. You are its continuation. And if you still believe that reason alone will protect you from it, ask yourself this. If people in history's darkest experiments could lose themselves in a matter of hours, what makes you think your mind is immune? There is a part of your brain that does not care about right or wrong. It only cares about winning, belonging, and surviving. That part is ancient, and it is very much alive. We are about to move from what dark psychology is to how it works on you, around you, and sometimes through you. But first, ask yourself quietly, how much of what I believe was designed to protect me, and how much was designed to control me? That answer is where we go next. It does not take a villain to use dark psychology. It only takes a motive, a need to persuade, to win, to protect, or to stay in control. And once that need appears, the tools are ready, subtle, powerful, and almost always unspoken. The mechanics of manipulation are rarely loud. They are not about screaming orders. They are about planting suggestions that feel like your own thoughts. You have seen these tactics. You have probably used some of them. Gaslighting is one of the most well-known. It is not about lying. It is about rewriting the past in small ways, over time, until the other person doubts their own memory. Their sense of reality fractures. The manipulator does not need to be correct. They just need the victim to feel unsure. That hesitation is the space where control enters. Then there is framing. A conversation can shift entirely, not because the facts changed, but because the way they were presented did. The person framing the issue defines what is worth discussing, what the limits are, and what the reasonable conclusion should be. You think you are deciding, but someone already defined your options. In workplaces, relationships, media, these methods show up constantly. A boss offers constructive feedback that subtly makes you feel guilty for resting. A partner uses concern to make you question your independence. A news outlet asks a question that implies the answer. The influence is not in the statement, it is in the structure. Even kindness can be weaponized. Guilt tripping operates by offering care with a hidden cost. It tells you that love is conditional, that your value depends on meeting someone else's emotional needs. When you comply, you feel relief. When you resist, you feel shame. That pattern teaches you to submit, not from force but from fear of losing connection. These are not rare tactics. They are normalized, taught, repeated, reinforced, and they work because they operate inside what you already care about: your identity, your relationships, your values. Now consider this. Your mind is not built to resist every influence. It is built to prioritize survival. That means shortcuts. Cognitive biases fill in the blanks. You trust people who look like you, believe what you already agree with, reject ideas that challenge your group identity. These mental habits are not flaws. They are features of the system. And when someone understands those features, they can steer you without ever touching you. Social psychologists like Robert Cialdini have outlined how persuasion works. Scarcity, authority, reciprocity, consistency, these principles shape behavior without direct force. They work even when you are aware of them, because they speak to your instincts, not your intellect. So now ask yourself, in your daily life, how often are you really making decisions, and how often are you following invisible prompts? It is easy to believe that only bad people use these tools, but reality is not that clean. These methods are used by people who love you, people who mean well, people who think they are protecting you, and yes, by you, when you need to win an argument, protect your ego, or hide your fear. Dark psychology does not need permission, it only needs an opportunity. And it thrives in silence, in the moments when you do not question why you feel what you feel, why you changed your mind, why you gave in. But what if the enemy is not just outside you, but also inside? What if the voice that convinces you to stay quiet, to agree, to smile when you want to scream, that voice is not really you, but the part that learned to survive by surrendering? That is where we go next. Because the greatest manipulator in your life might not be someone else. It might be the version of you that you built to be accepted, and now we need to meet it. It is easy to view dark psychology as something done to you, something used by others, manipulators, narcissists, abusers. But the most unsettling truth, the one most people avoid at all costs, is this: you have used it too. Not because you are evil, not because you set out to deceive, but because it is built into the way you learn to survive. From childhood, you were rewarded for compliance, punished for defiance. You learned what to say, what not to say, how to behave, who to become. And when the external pressure grew stronger, you began to construct a version of yourself that could get through it. Calculated, agreeable, adaptable. That version may look like strength, but often it is the mask of psychological survival. Carl Jung warned that ignoring the shadow does not make it disappear, it only gives it more power. The shadow self is not a demon lurking in the dark. It is the repressed parts of your mind, the instincts you deny, the aggression, fear, selfishness, and lust for control that you pretend are not there. When unacknowledged, these traits do not vanish. They emerge in hidden ways, often through manipulation. You tell a white lie, not because you have to, but because it protects your image. You shift blame subtly in conversation to avoid discomfort. You withhold truth, not out of strategy, but because silence keeps people on your side. These are not anomalies, they are patterns, and the deeper you look, the more you will find. This is not a theory of evil, it is a description of reality. Psychologists call it projection, disowning a trait in yourself and assigning it to others. You say someone is controlling, but it is your fear of losing control. You label someone toxic, but it is your unresolved resentment that distorts the picture. These are not just misunderstandings, they are acts of emotional control toward others, but also toward yourself. Philosophers have explored this for centuries. Nietzsche wrote about the masks we wear to avoid confronting our nature. Sartre spoke of bad faith, living in self-deception to escape the burden of truth. The line between victim and manipulator is not as solid as you think. In many cases, it is the same person, just playing different roles at different times. There is a reason this part of the truth is avoided. No one wants to see themselves as the villain, but denial is not redemption, it is anesthesia. Ask yourself privately, when was the last time you knowingly twisted a truth to gain favor? When did you stay quiet to avoid conflict, even though someone else paid the price for your silence? When did you sense a weakness in someone, and without thinking, you used it? These questions are not here to shame you. They are here to show you the full map. Because if you do not understand how you use dark psychology, you will never understand how it uses you. There is also the paradox at the heart of it. The more you try to be good, the more you may manipulate others into believing it. And the more you pretend to have no darkness, the more likely it controls you from the shadows. This is why awareness matters, not for virtue, not for superiority, but for survival, for liberation from patterns you did not choose but repeat anyway. You may be wondering, how do I face this shadow without being consumed by it? That question, your question, is the doorway to the answer. We are about to go there. We will look at what dark psychology really is. Not just the techniques, not just the behavior, but the forgotten force itself. And when you see it, you may realize it was never outside of you to begin with. You kept looking outward, trying to spot manipulation in the people around you. You learned how to detect lies, how to read micro-expressions, how to recognize the red flags, but you were looking in the wrong direction. The real force, the one that bends your thoughts, shifts your emotions, and shapes your decisions, is not out there. It is embedded in your mind, not as a thought, but as a system built through repetition, pressure, and years of subtle reinforcement. You call it personality. But what if that is just the result of long-term adaptation to environments that trained you how to be accepted? You call it memory. But memory is not a camera, it is a reconstruction. It edits itself constantly, deleting contradictions, rewriting guilt, erasing discomfort. You call it morality. But morality for most people is not a compass. It is a costume, worn in public, altered depending on who is watching. This is not a matter of blame, it is a matter of clarity. What we call dark psychology is not only a toolbox used by manipulators, it is a force of nature, built into human evolution, refined by culture, passed down through generations. It uses fear, desire, shame, and hope to pull the strings, and it works best when you believe you are immune. The truth is, your mind protects itself through illusions. You are not wired to seek truth. You are wired to feel safe. Safe in your identity, in your beliefs, in your place in the social hierarchy. That safety comes at a cost. You stop asking where your beliefs come from. You forget to challenge the emotional tone of your reactions. You accept explanations that soothe, rather than disturb. You trust people who speak confidently, even if they are wrong. You doubt people who speak cautiously, even if they are right. This is not random. This is conditioning, and it is everywhere. So what is the force you forgot to name? It is the convergence of everything you never wanted to examine. Your past wounds, your adaptive lies, the roles you play to stay loved, the unspoken agreements you make to avoid abandonment. It is the unconscious scripts running beneath your thoughts. It is the manipulative instinct that tells you to twist a sentence for sympathy. It is the rationalization that helps you avoid guilt. It is the moment you justify what you once condemned. And most of all, it is the internal silence you maintain when something inside you wants to speak, because silence keeps the system intact. Every major school of thought warned about it. Jungian psychology called it the shadow. Freud named it the unconscious. Foucault called it the hidden power in structures. Machiavelli exposed its utility, but none of them fully captured how deeply it runs. Because this force does not just live in ideas, it lives in your rituals, your habits, your language, your identity. So now it is your turn. Write down one moment where you felt like you were being controlled, but told yourself you were not. Or even harder, write down one moment where you knew you were controlling someone else, but justified it as love, or logic, or necessity. Be honest. That is the beginning of freedom. Do not try to defeat dark psychology. That is another illusion. See it, name it, watch how it moves through you. That is how you begin to reclaim your mind from the inside out. But the deeper question remains, if the force is part of you, can you ever truly escape it? Or is self-awareness just another form of self-deception, crafted to feel like growth, while keeping the system alive? Hold that question, because not every answer is meant to be solved. Some are meant to change you. By now you see it clearly. Dark psychology is not an outside threat waiting to ambush you. It is already woven into the fabric of your life. It is the smile you force, the silence you keep, the thoughts you suppress. It is the rules you follow without question, the guilt that follows desire, the praise you seek from people you do not respect. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. But awareness does not free you, not in the way you expect. This is the dilemma. Knowing that you are being influenced does not stop the influence. Understanding that you manipulate others does not erase the need. Recognizing your emotional triggers does not make them vanish. What changes is not the game, but your relationship to it. The truth unsettles for a reason. It strips away the narrative that you are always the hero, always the rational mind, always the innocent one. It leaves you naked, no longer able to hide behind self-image. It introduces a new kind of tension, not between good and evil, but between what is real and what is easy to believe. So now what? What do you do with this insight? Most people return to sleep. They see the discomfort and recoil. They tell themselves it is too much, too heavy, too dark. They seek positivity, motivation, affirmations, anything to restore the illusion, anything to stop the mind from asking, if I am not who I thought I was, then who am I really? That question is terrifying because it opens a void. In that void, all your roles begin to crack. The parent, the partner, the professional, the friend. Suddenly, you see how much of each role was designed to meet others' expectations. You wonder how often you betrayed yourself to maintain peace, how many truths you buried under the need to be liked, to be accepted, to be normal. But the void is not your enemy. The real danger is pretending it is not there. Philosophy and psychology meet at this edge. Existential thinkers like Kierkegaard and Heidegger wrote about the anxiety of freedom, the weight of choice when illusions fall apart. In modern psychology, shadow work demands the same confrontation. To truly know yourself, you must face the parts you wish never existed. But here lies the paradox. The more you face, the more you realize how deep the conditioning goes. You peel one layer, only to find another. You escape one lie, only to discover it was protecting you from a deeper truth. You break a cycle, only to find that you were using it to avoid an even darker part of yourself. Self-awareness does not end. It loops, it evolves, and every step forward reveals more complexity, more contradiction, more uncertainty. And that is the cost of waking up. You do not get to return to ignorance. You do not get to unknow what you now know. So where do you go from here? You pause, you observe, you get honest. You stop asking how to fix everything, and instead start asking why you believe it needs to be fixed. You stop searching for a perfect version of yourself, and begin to accept that every version carries both clarity and distortion. You may never escape dark psychology fully, but you can become aware of when it moves. You can see when a reaction is real, and when it is the echo of an old wound. You can notice when your words are yours, and when they are recycled scripts spoken to win favor or avoid discomfort. And that awareness changes something. It does not bring peace, it brings responsibility. If that feels like a weight, good. It means you are no longer sleepwalking. So here is where we stop, but not where we end. If this spoke to something inside you, share it with someone who needs to know, someone who still believes their thoughts are only theirs, someone who thinks control only exists outside them. Subscribe, not to follow me, but to follow this process, because what comes next is not a tutorial, it is a descent into darker truths, unspoken instincts, and what happens when you no longer look away. If this is the force you forgot to name, then the next one will be the one you never knew existed, and it is already watching.